set aside your inhibitions. Maybe sometimes when it feels right, maybe it's alright. I want you speaking in tongues. You know what they say about those. They come together like we're together. You can't let them slip away. You can't let them slip away. Everything together, so unpredictable. But one thing I know.
All right. Hello, everybody. And thank you so much for being here today for this local investment showcase. We're really thrilled that y'all could join us and really appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here. We've got a tight schedule today, so I'm going to dive in kind of in a hurry. We've got 5 great folks that we want to share information with you about. And so I'm going to jump right in and we will get started. So first of all, I want to invite Paul Herendeen, who is the Director of Impact and Market Development at the Clearwater Credit Union here in Western Montana. And I invited Paul to speak today because, you know, we're always talking about moving your money into local banks and credit unions and financial institutions. And we talk about this kind of in the abstract and the general and the sort of like the aggregate impact of moving that money and the importance of it. But I wanted to hear us to hear directly from Paul, specifically about not just the things that they offer as a financial institution, but also
not like good or bad,
the kinds of direct statements of what kind of impact they are, what it looks like from their side of things. Where is their money going? How are they affecting the community? What is their impact out in the world? So I'll just turn it over to Paul to share just a couple of minutes on those topics. So thanks so much for being here, Paul.
Great, thank you for having me. Yeah, so as Andrew said, I am the Director of Impact Market Development here at Clearwater. I'll explain a little more about what that means in just a moment. But first, just a little bit of information about the credit union. We've been around since 1956, founded in Missoula, headquartered in Missoula. Currently at this point, manage a balance sheet of about $1 billion. And we have branches throughout Western Montana, mostly in the Missoula area, also in Butte. We're developing one in Bozeman, and we recently placed a few people in Great Falls as well. So we really serve the 20 westernmost counties of Montana and have been around for a bit. You know, at the end of the day, we are a community credit union, a member-owned financial cooperative. And when you talk about local investment, that's really all we do. That's like the basic banking model, right? We take deposits in, then we mobilize those, we make loans into the community, and that's the business. So of our loan portfolio, almost the entire thing is in Montana and in Western Montana specifically. We have purchased a very few solar loans as part of our investment portfolio from elsewhere in the country, but all of that money gets recycled back into the local economy. In terms of what we do with that, what does that actually mean? You know, we certainly do a full suite of just sort of standard banking operations. We have 3 business lines: mortgage lending, consumer lending, and business lending. And we do the full range of standard service accounts, loans, car loans, home loans, things like that. Our business portfolio is dominated by small businesses. Something like 95% of it qualifies as small business lending and basic credit union stuff. Now, in terms of impact, you know, of course, all of that has an impact, right? That's very easy to say. Any bank that lends locally is having a local impact, and that's all good. You know, in our case, we really try and go the extra mile to be good community partners. And that means developing a lot of products and services to solve specific needs that, you know, ordinarily, maybe they're not a big moneymaker for a financial institution. It's not a market they really want to get into. But we want to be creative and get things done out in the community. So just some examples of what that means. That all sounds very abstract. We have a solar lending program that we started a few years ago. So we do loans to put solar panels up on your roof. We helped develop Montana's CPACE program. We can't take very much credit for the development of that. That was really the Montana Facility Finance Authority and some nonprofits got that through. But CPACE lending is a very cool tool to do commercial energy efficiency improvements through a special tax assessment, long story, but a really good way for businesses to improve the energy performance of commercial property in a very cost-effective way. We know a lot of the affordable housing developers in our market quite well. We're always happy to do loans for them. We've worked with Habitat for Humanity. We've worked with NeighborWorks. We've worked with Homeward. So we are always happy to help finance affordable housing projects. Along those lines, we developed a pretty cool manufactured housing loan. As non-lenders may not know, if you have a manufactured home, if it doesn't sit on a foundation, it doesn't qualify for mortgage financing, and it can be kind of complicated to finance. We developed a loan to cover that, to help people get into a critical source of affordable housing in our communities. On the consumer side, we have honestly more programs than I have time to list off that are designed to help people solve financial problems, build credit, and basically just help them get a step up. Those are things like full service deposit accounts for people who don't qualify for traditional checking accounts. We have a auto loan for people with very low credit scores that we do through a carefully vetted set of local auto dealers, so people know that they're getting a good loan and also getting a good vehicle, not getting ripped off. We do an overdraft sweep account to help people who are frequently overdrawing their accounts. It reduces their fees dramatically, and many, many more things like that. Like really kind of niche programs where we identify a need, we try to design something that's going to help solve it, try it out. If it works, we keep doing it. And that really, I said I'll explain my job title. That really is the role that I help fill here. The idea being basically to have the bandwidth to dig into local problems, local financial needs, figure out if there's a role that we can play. Our lenders are very good. They're also very busy. They tend to be sort of head down on production work. So the whole point of having my position is to have the time to sit down with anybody in the community, talk about some unmet financial need, brainstorm, kick ideas around, see if we can't come up with something that's going to help solve it. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. You know, when you bank with an institution like us, literally all that money is staying local. The loans getting made are local. All the people being employed are local. And that money gets recycled straight back into our community. That's what I got.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Paul. And I just want to, I'm going to do the following. This is not Paul's provocation, but this is my own doing here. There's this thing, and I'll share the link in the chat, called mightydeposits.com, which Mika from NC3 shared with me. And I think, can you see this screen here that shows Clearwater on it right now? Mm-hmm. Great. So this looks at you can look up any bank or credit union in your community and see sort of the summary of what the economic impact is. So of every $100 you deposit, $57 in community investment going right back out to support things in the community. And 100% of the money that is getting invested with Clearwater, in accordance with this measurement here, is staying in Montana. Just to look over here at some national banks that are also here in Missoula. So you'll see, remember this figure was 57 for Clearwater. We see how much lower it is for US Bank and Wells Fargo, much less being recycled. Even that's above the industry average for for a for-profit bank. And only 1% here staying in the community relative to 100% for Clearwater. So just pretty stark example of just when you have a financial institution like Clearwater or any other credit union, their orientation is all about, as Paul was talking about, serving community needs, being focused on the community and not extracting profits out of it. So it's just a really strong signal about what it means to put your money into a local bank or credit union and how important that actually is. Yeah, we've got a couple of minutes for questions. So, go ahead, Paul.
Sorry, I just wanted to say one quick thing about that. You might ask, how come that number is 57 and not 100? Long story short, this is a little bit of inside baseball, but in bank management, you have a loan to asset ratio, right? Like how much of your assets are you actually lending out? you don't actually want that to be 100%. You have some investments that provides liquidity, that provides some de-risking, and also driving up that loan to asset ratio is something that we try really hard to do. We'd like it to be higher. Deposits went way up during COVID, so we're always looking to get more loans out there. But anyway, that's why that number is not 100.
That's great. Thank you so much, Paul. Really appreciate it. And like I said, as promised, I put in the chat there some links there where you can find there's lookup tools there where you can find local banks in your community, local credit unions in your community, and then I just stuck that link in there for Mighty Deposits so you can look at those kind of impact comparisons as well of financial institutions in your community. Scott, I saw your hand just went up and came down. I think what we're actually going to do is plan to do Q&A after each presenter, but I think let's just hold it until the end. And if you have questions along the way, go ahead and put them in the chat, and then we'll have time at the end to process those or follow up with you later to get those answered. So any questions you have for Paul, go ahead and put those in the chat and do that again as we're kind of moving through these subsequent presenters. So thank you so much, Paul. Really appreciate you being here. And I also want to give Clearwater a shout out because they, along with the National Coalition for Community Capital, were sponsors of a local investing workshop series that we're running right now. So beyond everything else that they do in the community, just a big shout out to Clearwater for supporting that educational event that is going on right now as well. So the whole purpose of bringing this showcase together was to do a couple things, to share with folks as individuals things that they can get invested in personally if they're interested, or just see the kinds of things that are out there that they can do, whether it's local moving money to a credit union, or this next example that's coming up here, folks who are starting a new business who are actually going to be raising money from community investment soon. So I will introduce them, and I'm going to take this really boring part that needs to be done so that we are legal and compliant with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So you're about to hear from Pink Bench Distilling, which is being started by Christina Boyd and Shauna Kelsey. And Pink Bench Distilling is considering offering of securities exempt from registration under the Act Rule 241. But they have not determined a specific exemption from registration they intend to rely on for the subsequent offer and sale of the securities. No money or other consideration is being solicited, and if sent in response, it will not be accepted. No offer to buy the securities can be accepted, and no part of the purchase price can be received until the issuer determines the exemption under which the offering is intended to be conducted. And where applicable, the filing, disclosure, or qualification requirements of such exemption are met. A person's indication of interest in investing in them involves no obligation or commitment of any kind, excuse me. So that gives you a little bit of a flavor of the kind of legal weeds that they have been going through for the last many months. But without any further ado, please welcome Chris and Shauna from Pink Bench Distilling.
Hello. Hello. So we have a PowerPoint to share with you guys. So we'll do that. We're going to share our screen and we'll move on from there. Hey, Shauna.
Hey, Chris, are you ready to give our pitch?
Yeah, but first, I have to tell you, on my run today, I got charged by a huge bear down by that apple orchard on River Road.
You know, last year I was in that orchard picking apples for our hard apple cider, and there was a bear eating them in the tree right next to me.
Huh, I wonder if that's the same bear.
I was there with the game warden to pick the apples so the bear wouldn't cause more trouble that year, but must be back this year. There's just too many unpicked apples and a lot of hungry bears.
Well, that's why we started this distilling business, to pick apples for a purpose.
Yeah, to make apple brandy.
No, to keep our local grizzly bears safe.
Oh, yeah, that too. Well, should we get to it?
Yes, right. Pink Bench Distilling crafts small batch spirits from ingredients grown on the farms and forests surrounding the small town of Troy, Montana, seated deep in the heart of the Rocky Mountains and the beautiful traditional hunting and gathering lands of the Tanaha people. Like those who've relied on these lands for generations, our business relies on the health of our ecosystem, and our mission is to offer products that embody, honor, and champion far northwest Montana's lush natural heritage and intrepid people.
Troy is my hometown. It's beautiful and simple and tight-knit. I have a history here and a connection to the community. And a decade ago, I decided to bring my skills and education home to work on economic development, sustainable agriculture, and city government, and to find solutions to an economy transitioning away from mining and logging. And believe me, those transitions are tough.
I came to Troy during the start of those hard transitions about 20 years ago to work with the state and local tribes on wildlife management. I've had direct experience with the thorny issues growing at the crossroads of our forests and towns, like bears raiding people's apple trees in their backyards. I want to be part of the solution, using the assets we have to meet the challenges that we face.
Fruit trees are one asset we have, and community is another. Using both, Chris and I started an apple festival together. Finally, a reason to pick and juice those apples before the bears get to them. The Apple Festival is in its 8th year and has been a win for Troy and for the bears. It also revealed a huge untapped source of heirloom apples in our area. So we got to thinking, what type of business could we craft around that abundance? One that could be financially successful outside of our small local economy.
But I am allergic to apples, so I can't drink apple juice and I can't drink hard apple cider. But for some reason, I can drink apple brandy. Brandy's a distilled spirit, so a distillery it would be. Besides, our forests have the most amazing array of plants that are ingredients in other distilled spirits, like juniper berries, cottonwood buds, arnica flower, and rose hips. All these plants need healthy, intact ecosystems to thrive. So Pink Bench Distilling is the perfect business to bring everything together, growing local agriculture, driving economic progress, and conserving nature. And what better way to celebrate conserving nature than having a fun drink with friends?
The terroir of our fresh and wild ingredients will be distilled into each bottle. If you like whiskey, you'll love our aged brandies and fresh eau de vies made from locally grown fruit, picked for a purpose.
Trust me, they're phenomenal.
We also have a bright forest fruit liqueur made with local wild berries and an earthy dandelion coffee liqueur. And we have a wild juniper gin infused with lemony spruce tips and spicy wild ginger.
Pure genius. Over the past 6 years, we've apprenticed at a successful craft distillery in the nearby town of Kalispell, learning the ropes of commercial distilling, including product development and distribution, tasting room management, and business reporting. We've also worked with every entrepreneurial resource in Montana to expand our small business expertise and networks.
In 2020, we purchased a building in the heart of Troy's old downtown. We've secured a bank financing for renovations. Our equipment is on order and our state and federal licensing is underway. By spring, we expect to distribute our products within Montana while also providing our community with a safe, welcoming tasting room that serves high-quality cocktails and non-alcoholic mocktails.
Because the craft distilling industry has grown exponentially over the past 10 years, we plan to expand our distribution across North America in the future. Pink Bench Distilling will create and support local jobs that defy the traditional boom and bust model on which our town was founded. Our sustainable business model will be part of Troy's transition to a resilient economy and newfound prosperity.
We're excited for you to join us on our Pink Bench to embody, honor, and champion far Northwest Montana's lush natural heritage and intrepid people.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris and Shauna. Again, if anyone has questions for Chris and Shauna or for Paul or any of our subsequent presenters, just throw them in the chat for now, and hopefully we'll have some time later. And I stuck this in the chat, but I just want to mention that Chris and Shauna are going to be raising money through an investment crowdfunding campaign. And that means it's a way for community investors to be able to participate in investing directly in local businesses and organizations. So it's a relatively new thing that allows people to not have to only have the option of sending their money to Wall Street if they want to invest in something, but actually to do something that's really meaningful in their place, in their community, that's affecting local people and local communities. And it also allows entrepreneurs like Chris and Shauna to go directly to their communities and the people who support them and love them and their customers and believe in them as a way to raise capital and go around some of the barriers that a lot of entrepreneurs face to raising capital. So stay tuned. They're going to be launching very soon, and you will definitely hear about it from me since you're here today. Okay, great. So also on that topic, of raising money to support communities. We are fortunate here to have Tracy McIntyre, the Executive Director of the Montana Cooperative Development Center. And they've been doing some incredible work here developing investment cooperatives. So I will turn it over to Tracy to tell us more about that. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you so much. Shauna and Krista, it's so good to see you guys. Just so you guys know, I'm from Eureka, so I've actually worked in Troy with those guys numerous times. You guys are just awesome, and I cannot wait to see what all you guys do up there. It's going to be fabulous. And those pesky bears. Mom said we had one through the farm the other day, so. Can everybody see this okay? I'm having trouble getting it blown up. Just give me 1 second. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Sorry. Just when you think everything's going to go just perfect, something changes on you.
We could see your screen, but you were not in slideshow view. So you were
Okay.
shared, but
Let me see what the heck's going on. Because my screen's always messy. You guys don't need to see all of that. You know, I might just share the slides later and talk if that's okay, Andrew, since
Absolutely.
we're getting a little bit of a problem.
do
So
whatever.
as Andrew said, my name's Tracy McIntyre. I'm the director for the Montana Cooperative Development Center. We have two organizations in our office. We are the Cooperative Development Center. That's a statewide economic development organization that uses cooperatives to address community and economic needs across all spectrums. And then we also are the Council of Cooperatives. So we serve all existing co-ops in the state of Montana. That's a membership trade association, really about sustaining and growing the cooperatives in the community. Our services from the Montana Co-op Development Center, you'll hear me reference at MCDC. We basically start you on your path to cooperative development. So if a community or a group of individuals want to explore that business model, we can help facilitate those initial meetings. We can help facilitate community meetings to kind of get a better understanding of what's going on. We do business planning, bring in economic development resources. I see some of our fellow partners like Tori and Sarah and those guys are here, but we partner with local economic development organizations, can help with funding scenarios, and really just connect to the larger cooperative and technical service providers in Montana. At the end of the day, in the simplest of terms, a cooperative is an enterprise created by a group of people who join forces and work together to solve a problem or reach a goal they all share. In Montana, we have 4 different structures of cooperatives. For the most part, our office works underneath the Cooperative Association, which is a for-profit business model, and it's called underneath the Chapter 15. I'm not going to get into Montana codes, but you'll hear us reference the Chapter 15 model often. We have 2 forms of agricultural co-ops. They can be tax exemption. They do have to file separately for that. It's just not automatically. And then we have our cooperative utilities. And of course, as Paul was talking about, we have our amazing credit unions who we love and are so appreciative of. I do want to stress something, that even though cooperatives are a global form of business, there's like over 3 million worldwide, they are controlled on a state or a state equivalent level. So please do not think that what I say today, as far as those state laws, are going to just magically work in Oregon or Idaho or another state. So if you're from a different state, please let me know, and I can always get you in touch with a cooperative development center that serves your state that would know better about your own laws. Just real briefly, there's over 160 co-ops in Montana. Our largest one are the ag supply stores or ag co-ops in general. 45 credit unions, 25 electricals, 8 telecommunications. And then the growing sector is definitely these cooperative associations, producer and consumer hybrids, retail services like grocery stores, hospitality. We even have a bookstore that's a co-op, retail, and then we have housing, worker, and what I'm here to talk to you guys about is investment cooperatives. Co-ops are always membership owned, membership controlled, and membership benefited, which means that members own it, they control it, and they should be benefiting it. They should be engaged in it in some way or another. There's 2 forms of stock, common stock are the owners. They are the ones with the voting power. They should be very engaged. Those are the members, again, that own and control it. And normally at the end of the year, if there's a profit of some kind, they can, if the board and if the cooperative is in a place, receive a patronage, which is money back based on what they have put into the co-op. We also then have preferred stock. Not all of our co-ops can offer this, but the ones that we are talking about with investment, they can. This is an investment option. It does not give you any ownership. It is a dividend-based investment, and it is a non-voting stock, which means, and this is the beauty about what we love about cooperatives, they're always democratically controlled. So no one person can control a co-op, sell a co-op, or have controlling stock in it. So it's pretty cool in that sense. There are 7 global guiding principles. I'm not going to go through those today, but if anybody's interested, definitely willing to give you that. Again, it's a global form of business. It's pretty amazing when you get into the cooperative world, how many people like talk across different countries about their co-ops and stuff. When we come into a community, we usually do an exploratory meeting or meetings, just depends on what's going on. And then there's 3 phases that we normally work through. The planning phase is when we work with the steering committee. That's the business planning side. We design the feasibility, all of those things. We move you into legal and then into an operational phase. So let's talk about what an investment co-op is. An investment co-op is a for-profit cooperative made up of local community members who identify businesses, projects, or causes into which they choose to invest. The co-op, also in our world known as an opportunity development cooperative, they are a little bit newer to Montana, but they are an innovative model for economic and business development that effectively bridges the gap between local investors and local ventures in need of financing. It's a cost-effective, community-owned and controlled impact fund. And we can get very creative with our cooperatives. The investment is usually, it's very typical to other co-ops. Potential members form a steering committee and go through the process of incorporating. They decide what kind of projects that they want to. The ones that we're forming in the state right now have been very focused on housing and childcare. They've been mostly business owners that have brought us in to talk about workforce issues, and they just want to find a different solution, but they don't really want to own a childcare or housing, like housing units. So what they're looking at doing is coming together, pulling their money into an investment co-op, and then selecting different projects that they can invest in. In Montana, what we have one in full operation. It's a Muscle Shell Community Investment Cooperative. This is in Roundup, Montana. The community came together and raised money to buy 1 share of the Roundup Schoolhouse project, which will be a multi-use building. It will have different components in the main level, different business offices, complex. The top level is going to have apartments, and then there will be community rooms and rooms availability for meetings and events in the basement, which I guess is huge. I actually haven't toured it yet. They are looking at their second preferred stock option, where they will start looking at what they want to raise money for next. We also then have projects like you've been hearing, or maybe you've heard in Baker. We have some happening in Lewistown and Whitefish and numerous other communities across the state. Other really popular investment co-ops, if anybody's really interested, I encourage you to look at the Sangudo, Alberta. They have the Sangudo Opportunity Development Cooperative. These guys were a group of people in Sangudo, which is a small hamlet up in northern Alberta that they had a lot of ranchers that needed a solution. So they actually created or invested in an old building, renovated it, and then incubated a meat processing center. And now they've been doing that. That company got going, bought their shares back out from the co-op, and then the co-op reinvested in a coffee roaster, and now they're investing in housing. So there's a lot of different ways that they can do it. Over in Pennsylvania, we have the Northwest Pennsylvania Investment Co-op. These guys just closed on their first property in November, and they're actually supporting Blissful Meats, which is going to have the distilling. I don't think you distill meat. I don't know. I'll let Shauna tell me that, and tasting room in there. And then probably one of the oldest in Montana is the Northeast Investment Cooperative out of Minnesota. It was formed in 2011, and they have been working on numerous building rehabs, business incubation, and housing projects in their neighborhood in Minneapolis. So there's multiple ways that we can do this. And oh, thank you, Andrew. I love that you just put that in the notes. Thank you. The co-ops are very flexible in Montana. That's the one thing that we want to do. And I'm definitely open to questions. That's kind of a quick and dirty overview. And I think I passed my 5 minutes. Sorry.
That's all right. Thanks so much, Tracy. I've got like 50 questions, but I'm going to hold off for now. And we will now shift over. Thanks so much for that, Tracy. Super great to hear about all that awesome work. You've been getting a lot of Montana heavy content here. So now we're going to balance that out by moving over to Western Montana, or excuse me, I can't get away from it. Western Massachusetts, where Rebecca Busanski is the Senior Program Manager for the Franklin County Community Development Corporation, which runs the PV Grows Investment Fund. And she's going to tell us a little bit about that. So take it away, Rebecca.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I know I guess I'm the only out-of-town speaker, but I feel like I'm learning a lot about Montana. So that's kind of cool. So as Andrew mentioned, I run the PV Grows Investment Fund. It's a program of the Franklin County Community Development Corporation, which has been doing small business lending and technical assistance for over 40 years. And 7 years ago, this month, actually, we launched the Pioneer Valley Grows Investment Fund. And the purpose of that is to have a community investment fund that pools financing or pools investment dollars to create financing to grow the local food system. So we actually started planning for this about 12 years ago with a group of nonprofit community lenders, a couple local foundations, and farm and food technical assistance providers, including a representative from the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture and Resources. And this group together really identified the need for gap financing in the farm and food sector and created this community investment fund piece in order to achieve this goal. So over the past 7 years, we've raised over $2.2 million from our community of investors. We've provided financing to 55 farm and local food businesses. And again, this is really gap financing. I think one of the amazing things about community capital is how it really gives you the ability, and I think you've heard from other speakers today, really gives you that ability, the community, to control where and how capital is going to be used. In our case, what we were really seeing in Western Mass and some of the surrounding states is that there's Farm Credit East, we have Farm Credit East, there's Farm Service Agency, there's some local banks who will do some farm financing, but they aren't always able to provide the financing, that kind of flexible financing that's really necessary. And that's where the PV Grows Investment Fund stepped in. So we accept investments we actually just lowered the threshold from $1,000 down to $500. So that's the minimum investment, up to $250,000. So a pretty wide range. We set it up intentionally to accept investments from accredited and non-accredited investors. We really wanted to democratize capital. And it's now a 3-year term. We kind of just came out with the new what we're calling the social impact pool. So we've learned a lot over the past 7 years and changed some of the terms. So it's a 3-year automatically renewing term, and you choose as the investor to earn between 0 and 2% in interest. And we pay that interest out annually. And then with that, we do events that got a little bit shut down during COVID, but they're back so people can get to know the borrowers. And we also keep investors updated with newsletters and other information as we go. And again, we've really seen our investors care, that they really care about who we're investing in, and they're more likely to support them all the more, which is a really great thing. And it's there's kind of multiple layers of protection. Of course, there's plenty of risk in community investing, and that's written all over the offering memorandum, as it should be. But there's also protection in that the Franklin County CDC has been doing this kind of lending for a long time. We have relationships with our borrowers, and we really provide a lot of technical assistance, which you feel is really a key. I mean, we see this with small businesses and entrepreneurs in general, but in farm and food, you see it even, I think it's even more pronounced, where we know that they're really passionate about what they're making or growing. And I think the Pink Bench Distillery, our friends from Pink Bench just were talking about that too, how you've taken advantage of every single thing that Montana has to offer in terms of small business development. And we see that in Western Massachusetts too, how critical that is for our borrowers, even before they've borrowed money from us and after. And really across the whole range, I would say, from the more sophisticated entrepreneurs who might have more of a finance background to the less sophisticated borrowers, really take advantage of that. And then I think, it's one of the interesting things for us. I think the pandemic really spotlighted how important community capital is. We were able, when the pandemic first hit, to offer all of our borrowers to put them on non-payment or interest-only payments immediately. Not everybody took us up on that. Everyone was in a very different situation. We joined forces with another local organization to offer emergency farm fund loans to farms that get hit, especially because it was March for us where we are. That was a lot of our maple syrup producers, our sugar houses. That is their season, March into April. A lot of our flour growers, and then of course we know what happened with other diversified vegetable growers, meat, those who were like raising livestock, et cetera. Anyway, everyone really got impacted in lots of ways, and we were able to help with that. And then finally, the Massachusetts came out with a couple very large multi-million grants for farms over the past 2 years during COVID. They're all reimbursable grants. And so we've been able to do the bridge loans, the short-term financing that was necessary at lower interest rates, so that these farmers could actually take advantage of these grants that they get paid back for after they complete the project. So I think that's really important to kind of highlight how community capital, at least has played out in our area, but what really gives it that kind of, really gives it potential is that folks are really invested in the mission. As I said, the most they're going to earn on their investment is 2%. So financially speaking, that's, definitely better than your savings account. Maybe it's pretty competitive with a CD right now. So what they're really doing is they're investing in their local food system, and it's that return that they want to see. And we have definitely seen kind of the fragility of the food system during the pandemic, no question about it. And I think we're still reeling from that, not to mention climate change. And so all those factors together, I think, really have driven investors. And I really say investors with the small I, because that's really what we're talking about. Folks who oftentimes don't even think of themselves as investors. Sometimes they do. We have a handful of financial advisors that direct people to the PV Grows Investment Fund, but it's really a lot of folks who have not been, don't think of themselves in that world of investing, or don't have a financial advisor, but invest in the PV Grows Investment Fund, since this is what they care about. So I should also add, the investment is investors. It's open to folks in New England, New York, and New Jersey, but not Vermont. Vermont has kind of a higher, more onerous level of reporting requirements, and has a lot of their own community investing options. So we're not able to offer it in Vermont right now. So I think that's about my time, and I'm also open to questions. So thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks so much, Rebecca. And yeah, everyone here is articulating, I think, the core reason that we're kind of bringing all these examples together, right? Which is, as Rebecca mentioned, there's so many different kinds of needs that community have, all these different financial needs that businesses have, and development needs in so many different kinds of places. And we are in this sort of new era where these opportunities are opening up to not just be, sending your money to distant Wall Street corporations that are doing who knows what with it, right? So those two things are existing on kind of opposite ends of this equation, and we finally have these ways to connect them, whether it's through direct investing, through investment cooperatives, through the kind of fund that Rebecca and PB Groves have set up in Western Montana, through moving your money to a local bank or financial institution. So that's the purpose of this whirlwind tour here, is to really just sort of highlight that in this kind of new age, we have a lot of opportunities to do things with our money that are so much more beneficial to us and our community and our businesses and our local places. So these opportunities are all kind of presenting themselves. And next I want to introduce Chris Miller, who is the founding board member and current board chair of the National Coalition for Community Capital, which is doing great work on this front all over the country. And I also want to shout them out as the primary sponsor for our local investing workshop series that I mentioned earlier. So big thanks to NC3 for that. And Chris is here to talk about a policy initiative that he is working on in Michigan. So Rebecca, you're not alone. He's our other non-Montana presenter, but all of the states have to start with M. That was the one requirement for speakers today. So Chris is going to tell us a little bit about this policy initiative to basically try to incentivize and cultivate more local investing activity, and starting with Michigan, and hopefully it'll be successful there, and we'll be able to pursue it in other states as well. So Chris, tell us more about that.
Great, thanks very much. I appreciate it, Andrew, and greetings, colleagues. It's always wonderful to talk to people and hear from people from all over the country that are doing amazing things in their spaces, and kudos in particular to your local credit union that's really acting like a credit union ought to do and not like a bank, which we see a lot of that in that space. So it's really terrific to see that commitment, but congratulations to everybody who's on the call today. PB Grows is one of our favorite projects in the country. Very briefly, the challenges that we've found, those of us that have been working in this space for a while have been finding lots of challenges to it. Initially, we couldn't find attorneys that could tell us about this kind of investing. Still very difficult to find investment advisors that have any concept of community capital, local investing, et cetera. And so one of the efforts that we've done at NC3, our entire reason for existing is to advance the cause of this community capital, local investing, local wealth building, local decision making, local control. We see it as one of the fundamental problems that we have globally and certainly nationally. People feel like there is no future. They feel like there's no way to make a difference in their communities. And we know a lot of that is really based in capital and the ability to retain and recirculate capital locally and start businesses and be innovative and be exciting in our own communities, looking at quality of life issues. So to that end, we've done several things over the course of the organization to advance the movement. And one of the things that we recognize is that we wanted to find a way to incentivize people to do something that for most of us is completely foreign. That is to make a direct investment into a business in our own communities. And that community can be a geographic community, it could be a sector. A lot of folks I suspect on today's call are very excited about green energy and trying to do things in a responsible way with respect to the planet that we're living on. But in any event, so we recognize that we have to incentivize folks to do something that they haven't done before. And there's a great example of this. There was a reference earlier to Canada and a program that was up there. So in Nova Scotia, they set up a program in 1999 to allow essentially community investing, pooled investment vehicles. And to incentivize folks to do that, they gave them an income tax credit. And there's really great data. In 2019, we finally had some scholarly research done around it. All of us, I'm sure Scott will articulate, want to see data. And so in 2019, they did some data on this program. And essentially, by incentivizing folks to put their money in this pool investment vehicles, they were able to generate quite a lot of exciting stuff on a local level, starting a bunch of businesses, as in the dozens and dozens of them in that 1 year. I believe it was 1,200 full-time positions that were created or protected as a result of that. We just saw that was a really neat model. Michael Shuman, who I know you're all familiar with, has been talking about this. He's been out in the cornfield yelling about this for a long time. He has referenced the Canadian program. So having heard that from Michael a lot, we decided we would take this to the Michigan legislature, where we had gotten a pretty warm welcome about a dozen years or so ago when we started a state-based exemption for investment crowdfunding. Actually got that done before the feds did. So we went to our local legislators. Incidentally, in Michigan's investment crowdfunding law, and actually all of them, there are now 37 states and the District of Columbia that have investment crowdfunding state-based exemptions, and they were overwhelmingly bipartisan. So we like that. That's a great way to do. We think the far right and the far left can get together on this issue. So we have proposed and introduced, and actually moving through the Michigan House of Representatives right now, an income tax incentive that would be equal to 50% of an investment that a Michigan citizen would make in a Michigan business. And we're optimistic we're going to get this done in the lame duck session this year, which is coming up in November and December. It provides, again, so you're a Michigan citizen, you invest in a Michigan businesses as defined by the Internal Revenue Service, which essentially is a level of investment, employment, and ownership and sales that happen within a state. Then you would be eligible to receive a 50% state of Michigan income tax credit. That income tax credit you can carry forward up to 10 years. So if you don't have a liability in a given year and owe money to the state, you can carry it for 10 years. So we are excited about it. It has a $3,000 cap on it. So essentially a $6,000 investment would be the most that you could make and receive the income tax credit. But as we know, most of us are non-accredited investors. There's actually a federal ceiling on that, which is lower than that. So that didn't hurt us too much to say we would put that in there. And it made the Treasury Department less unhappy than they were initially. So in any event, so we are hoping to move this forward, and we'd love to then take it. There's a couple of other states right now that have asked us for some help with it. And we'd like to see it. We believe that all of our communities, down to the smallest one, should have pooled investment vehicles. And we believe that the states can really be smart economic developers, and economic development hasn't always been very smart, isn't very smart right now necessarily. Lots of money goes to places where really there's no great return to local units, and often there's more harvesting of local capital than investing in local capital. So we think this is a great way to kind of change the paradigm for folks and encourage them to vote. So maybe they can, or encourage them to vote with their dollars. And so maybe we can see more businesses started like that very interesting distillery that looks like it's going to be launched pretty soon in your area. So anyway, glad again for questions now or at the end. And really appreciate, Andrew, the opportunity to talk to these folks. And we're proud as NC3 to be working together with you to advance the cause.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciate hearing about that. So we've got about 7 minutes left by my clock. So two things. While you're ruminating on the fire hose of information that just got blasted at you and formulate any questions, feel free to stick them in the chat. You can also just come off mute and ask. We're a small enough group here where I think we can manage that. I also just want to mention while you're sort of digesting a little bit and putting any questions in there that you have, part of this whole process of doing this education and showcasing and outreach is that we're going to be starting, planning to launch kind of early in 2023, a local investing action network, basically a place where people who are interested in participating in local investing can come together to figure out what that means for them, what the smart ways to do that is, what their opportunities are, what options are out there. Basically trying to create a kind of a support network for folks who want to take that forward, who actually want to bring that action into their lives as individuals, or people who are in sort of a leadership position in their community and say they want to start, something like PV Grows in their place. So how do we help them and support them to do that? Maybe they want to try to push a policy initiative like Chris talked about, just these kind of, maybe they want to start a investment cooperative. So where do they go? How do they get the resources and so forth? So whether you're an individual or community activist, type person, we want to create a place to really move this work forward so that people aren't just out on their islands doing this by themselves. So, heads up for that, because that's another thing that you'll be hearing from me about, an invitation to be involved in that if you're interested. Like I said, we're going to be sort of finalizing the plan for that over the next couple months and hopefully launching early next year. And yeah, I will just pause for a second, see if there's any questions out there. And otherwise, I've got a few. So Chris or Scott, looks like you came off mute. Do you have something to ask?
No, just wanted to thank you for this event. It's an incredible conversation. Chris, it's great to see you again, and Mika as well. There's so much that you guys are doing out there that is just needed in so many other communities. And I want to talk to you offline about another event that we should do to talk about how do we get people into investment even before crowdfunding, as there's a big opportunity with community currency, which we can talk about another time. But thank you again. This is awesome, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Scott.
Yeah, man.
I have a question for Tracy. Tracy, I'm sort of curious, a little bit about just like on the surface level, like the kind of the mechanics of how people interact with an investment cooperative like the ones that you've created. Like, are there investment limits? How do they actually conduct the investment? Like, what does that look like from a community member side who's interested in participating in an investment cooperative?
Yeah, so the first thing to understand is that the way that we've been setting them up, and there is some flexibility, but just our recommendation is that we recommend to the communities when they're doing investment co-ops to keep the common stock, that ownership stock, pretty minimal, and then use the preferred stock for their project base. So then you would have preferred stock A would be like in Roundup, their schoolhouse, right? That's a project. They then put out preferred stock offerings. You register that with the Secretary of State saying, hey, we're going to offer these preferred stock. This is how much it's going to be. Now they kept theirs. I think theirs are, I've got so many numbers from so many different co-ops in my head, so don't quote me on this. I think theirs is 1,000 or 2,000 per preferred stock share. We actually recommend that to be a little bit lower. So then you can have a community member that maybe has $500 that they're willing to do. They can put it in. And then if a member has 10,000, then they can put the equivalent of stock. They can buy that mini stock into it. So then it really gives that true community ownership and not making it kind of an elite type thing. And then if you have second projects, so preferred stock C, say, there's discussion of another historic building being renovated there, they might be offering the second preferred stock. It would be for that. So people then can pick and choose which type of investment they want. Now, most investment co-ops are doing real estate, but we are seeing a lot more interest in revolving loan fund programming, kind of what Rebecca was talking about, more community investment or community fund gap financing and running some revolving loan funds for local communities.
Great. Thanks, Tracy. And there was a request in the chat for information on the cooperative and Roundup from your friend Chris Boyd there in Troy, Montana.
Let me see. What would you like to know, Chris?
That was for me. I'm just curious to learn more about it if you have a link that
they actually don't have anything. But here's the great thing, Shauna, is their president of their board, well, ex-president, but still on the board, is actually our EDA local investment guru that works for us now. So I can just have her and you connect, and you can visit about all things if you want.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm always thinking of what could match with Troy, and over time, something like that could work.
That would be great in Troy. Knowing Troy, I think it would be wonderful. And maybe next time I'm home, I can shoot over and visit with you guys even further.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's some good momentum happening.
Yeah, I'm going to put my email in the chat. And then if anybody wants to contact with me one-on-one, just let me know.
That'd be great. Thanks. And I know we were just about at time, but I wanted to ask Rebecca. Rebecca, what do you I'm sure you could write a tome on this topic, but if somebody were interested in pursuing the creation of a local investment fund in the vein of PV Grows, what's the sort of highest level summary of like process, what you would recommend, things like that? How would you encourage someone to go about that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I guess, I mean, in our experience, really, it was the two local foundations that were so key to the formation. You need some program development money. That's what we found, which is a nonprofit organization that came in the form of grants from our local foundations. We also had really good lawyers. We first worked with Jenny Casson out of Oakland, and then with Cutting Edge Capital, who's amazing organization, and Clavin's, or both, they're all out of the Bay Area in California. And then we now work with Clavin's Law Group out of Boston, Mass. So I think understanding that kind of local, that legal landscape for setting up a community investment fund as part of a nonprofit was really important. And then I think having the stakeholders at the table, as I said, we started planning 12 years ago, and we have basically the same group meets monthly as our advisory committee and reviews every inquiry now. So there's been just a really long-term commitment to this investment fund.
Great. Thanks so much for that overview. Really, really appreciate it. Okay, well, we are at time. Want to respect everyone's days and schedules, so I'll stay here for another minute or so. But otherwise, any last thoughts or contact info or websites or emails or anything you want to put in the chat, go for it. And otherwise, we will close it down here momentarily.
Andrew, I'll just add that all of our offering memorandum, agreements, notes are all on our website. So, you know, we like to share. I think this is but there's part of this movement that's all about learning from each other. So,
excellent. As is evidenced by our presence here today. So, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And just huge thanks to Paul and Chris and Shauna from Pink Bench Distilling, Paul from Clearwater Credit Union, Tracy from the Montana Cooperative Development Center, Rebecca from PB Grows, and Chris from the National Coalition for Community Capital. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Really appreciate you being here. And like I said, you'll be hearing from me soon.
Thanks,
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, everybody.
Ron.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Andrew.